My name is Hazel Johnson. I'm 32 years old, and until 3 weeks ago, my sister Allison and I told each other everything. Then she uninvited me from her destination wedding in the Bahamas, a wedding I'd already spent $3,000 on flights and hotel reservations for. All because I wouldn't bow down to her manipulative fiancé Jason and his family's demands. So instead of losing my money and my dignity, I decided to take that vacation anyway. Alone. I had no idea that my solo trip would coincide with her perfect wedding completely falling apart. If you're enjoying this story so far, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real-life family drama stories. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and if you've ever had to stand your ground against toxic family members. Growing up, Allison and I were inseparable despite the 2-year age gap between us. We shared a bedroom in our modest suburban home, swapped clothes, and told each other our deepest secrets. I was the responsible one who helped her with homework, while she was the creative spirit who taught me to lighten up and enjoy life. Our dynamic worked perfectly until our parents' divorced when I was 16 and she was 14. The divorce hit us hard. Dad moved across the country to be with his new girlfriend, while Mom worked 2 jobs to keep the house. During those turbulent teenage years, Allison and I leaned on each other more than ever. I remember countless nights when she'd crawl into my bed, crying about missing Dad, and I'd hold her until she fell asleep. We promised each other that no matter what happened, we'd always prioritize our relationship. After high school, I worked part-time jobs while attending community college. When Allison graduated 2 years later, our father suddenly announced he wouldn't help with her college tuition as promised. He claimed his new family's expenses were too demanding. I'll never forget Allison's devastated face when she realized her dreams might be over before they began. "Don't worry," I told her that night. "We'll figure it out." And we did. I put my own graduate school plans on hold, took on a full-time position at a marketing firm, and helped Allison through her undergraduate degree. The pride I felt watching her walk across that graduation stage made every sacrifice worthwhile. I still remember her excited call about the amazing guy in accounting who'd asked her to dinner. During their first few months dating, Jason seemed charming, successful, and attentive. Jason would check her phone when she wasn't looking. He'd make subtle comments about her friends being bad influences. He'd question why she needed to see me so often when she had him now. When I gently mentioned these concerns, Allison brushed them off. "He just cares about me," she'd say. "He's protective because his ex cheated on him." 6 months into their relationship, things escalated. Allison started canceling our weekly sister brunches. She stopped attending monthly game nights with our childhood friends. Her social media posts dwindled, then disappeared entirely. Jason had convinced her that real adults don't waste time online. Then came the whirlwind engagement after only 6 months of dating. Jason proposed during a weekend trip to wine country, a trip Allison later admitted she hadn't particularly wanted to take, as she'd been hoping to visit our mom that weekend. But Jason had already arranged everything, including telling her what to pack. "Hazel, you should see the ring," she gushed over the phone. "It's exactly what I've always wanted." Except it wasn't. Allison had always talked about wanting a simple, ethically sourced sapphire, her birthstone. Jason had purchased a massive diamond that looked uncomfortable on her slender finger. Despite my misgivings, I threw myself into supporting her. I hosted an engagement party, created a wedding website, and spent countless hours helping her research venues. When Jason insisted on a destination wedding in the Bahamas, despite knowing many family members couldn't afford to attend, I kept my opinions to myself. When he demanded a lavish affair that would clearly strain Allison's finances, I offered to pay for the flowers and her dress. "That's so sweet of you," Allison had said, hugging me tight. "But Jason says he wants to handle all the finances. He says it's good practice for marriage." I later discovered handling the finances meant Allison would pay for most things while Jason controlled how the money was spent. But by then, wedding planning was already in full swing. Who seemed perpetually anxious about pleasing him and his family. Still, nothing prepared me for what happened 3 weeks before the wedding. The evening started pleasantly enough. Allison had invited me to dinner with Jason and his parents, Thomas and Marilyn Winters, at an upscale steakhouse downtown. I'd met them briefly at the engagement party, where they'd been polite but distant. This dinner was supposed to be our chance to really connect before the wedding, as Allison had put it. I arrived 15 minutes early. Allison couldn't decide what to wear as usual. He laughed as if he'd said something charming, while my sister's smile faltered. Dinner conversation remained superficial through appetizers. Jason's father, Thomas, dominated the discussion with stories about his real estate empire, while his mother, Marilyn, occasionally interjected with name drops of their influential friends. I noticed Allison barely spoke, just nodded along enthusiastically. The tension began during the main course, when Thomas started expressing strong political opinions about immigration policies. His comments made me uncomfortable, especially knowing my sister's previous humanitarian work with refugee organizations, work she hadn't mentioned once since meeting Jason. "Don't you agree, Hazel?" Thomas asked, finishing a particularly harsh statement. I paused, carefully choosing my words. "I respect your perspective, but I actually have a somewhat different view. I believe immigration has generally strengthened our communities and economy." The table fell silent. Jason glared at me while his mother's eyebrows shot up in apparent shock that someone had disagreed with her husband. "Well," Thomas finally said, "it's clear you've been influenced by liberal media. When you have more life experience, you'll understand the real world." I was 32, had traveled to 12 countries, and managed a team of 20 people at a global marketing firm, but I bit my tongue. "Perhaps we could discuss something else? I'd love to hear about your vacation home," Allison mentioned. The evening recovered somewhat, but the atmosphere remained strained. When we parted, Jason barely looked at me, though Allison hugged me tightly and whispered, "Thank you for coming." The next morning, my phone rang at 7:30 a.m. Allison's name flashed on the screen. "Hey, everything okay?" I answered, concerned by the early call. "Hazel, we need to talk." I even changed the subject to keep things comfortable. "Well, Jason and his parents were extremely offended," she continued in that same flat tone. "They think you don't support our relationship." "That's ridiculous. I've supported you every step." "I need to make some changes to the wedding," she interrupted. "I think it would be best if you don't come." The words hit me like a physical blow. "You're uninviting me? Your own sister? Over one polite disagreement?" "It's not just that," she said, her voice suddenly sounding tearful. My own eyes filling with tears. "I've had concerns because I love you, but I've supported your choices. I've helped plan this wedding. If you really supported me..." Phone clutched in my hand, tears streaming down my face. I couldn't believe my sister, the person I'd practically raised after our dad left, the person I'd helped put through college, would discard me so easily at her fiancé's command. Over the next few days, I tried repeatedly to reach Allison. My calls went to voicemail. My texts received brief, cold responses that didn't sound like her at all. I even drove to her apartment, but Jason answered the door and said she didn't want to see me. In desperation, I called our parents. Dad, who'd reconnected with Allison after she began dating successful Jason, told me I should just apologize for making waves. Mom was heartbroken, but felt powerless to intervene, especially since she wasn't contributing financially to the wedding. "Maybe just apologize, even if you don't mean it," Mom suggested gently. "You know how much having everyone there means to Allison." "Does it, though?" I asked. "Because it seems like what Jason wants matters more than anything else." A week passed, and my hurt gradually transformed into anger. I'd already paid non-refundable deposits for my flight and accommodation in Nassau. I'd taken approved vacation time from work. I'd bought new sundresses and beach accessories. That's when my best friend Megan made a suggestion during our coffee date. "Why don't you just go anyway? Not to the wedding, but to the Bahamas. Have your own vacation." I almost dismissed the idea immediately. It seemed too painful, too close to the event I was now banned from attending. But the more I thought about it, the more appealing it became. "You know what?" I finally said. "I think I will." After being uninvited from Allison's wedding, I cycled through every emotion imaginable. I spent one entire weekend in bed, alternating between sobbing, sleeping, and staring blankly at old photos of Allison and me. I felt like I'd lost my sister even before the wedding took place. My friend Megan came over Sunday evening with takeout and wine, finding me in the same sweatpants I'd been wearing since Friday night. "Enough," she declared, pulling open my curtains. "You need fresh air and a plan." She listened patiently while I vented my frustration and hurt again. Then she asked a simple question that changed everything. "What would you do if you weren't so focused on what you've lost?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, you've paid for a trip to a beautiful Caribbean island. You have approved vacation time. Why let Jason steal that from you too?" The thought hadn't seriously occurred to me until that moment. Go to the Bahamas anyway? To the same resort where my sister would be getting married? Wouldn't that seem petty or vindictive? I asked. Megan shrugged. "Who cares how it seems? You're not going to crash the wedding. You're just refusing to lose money and a vacation because of someone else's toxic behavior." That night, after Megan left, I opened my laptop and looked at my travel arrangements. My flight to Nassau was scheduled for Wednesday, 3 days before the Saturday wedding. My return flight was booked for the following Tuesday, giving me nearly a week in paradise. Paradise I'd be experiencing alone. The next morning, I called my travel agent. "Is it possible to change my hotel within the same resort? Maybe to a different section or building?" "Let me check. I could move you to the beach tower on the opposite side of the resort for the same rate." "Perfect," I said, feeling a small surge of empowerment. Spa packages. I started booking activities to fill my days, particularly scheduling things during the wedding and reception times. When I shared my decision with our friend group, reactions were mixed. Some, like Megan, were enthusiastically supportive. "Reclaim your vacation," texted Zoe. "Show them you won't be pushed around," said Kyle. Others were more hesitant. "Couldn't you just apologize to keep the peace?" asked Daniel. "Even if you don't mean it? Is it worth possibly burning the bridge forever?" worried Samantha. Their concerns echoed my own doubts, but something had fundamentally shifted inside me. Years of putting Allison first, of organizing my life around supporting her, had culminated in being discarded at her fiancé's whim. For once, I needed to prioritize myself. The following weekend, I went shopping. Instead of the subdued, wedding-appropriate outfits I'd originally planned, I bought bright, bold sundresses, a revealing swimsuit I normally wouldn't have dared wear, and a pair of hiking sandals for exploring. Each purchase felt like reclaiming a small piece of my autonomy. On Sunday evening, I posted a carefully worded update on my Instagram. Change of plans. Turning my Bahamas trip into a solo adventure. Any recommendations for must-see spots in Nassau? I deliberately made no mention of the wedding or why my plans had changed. Within hours, my post had dozens of comments. Among them was a message from our cousin Jenna. "I'll be there too. Let's grab a drink." I was surprised. Jenna was supposed to be attending the wedding. I sent her a private message, and she explained that she too had been uninvited after questioning Jason's treatment of Allison. "You're not alone," she wrote. "Half the extended family isn't going anymore. It's just going to be Jason's people and a few friends who don't know what's really going on." Something was seriously wrong with the dynamic between my sister and her fiancé. The night before my flight, I felt a complex mix of emotions: sadness that things had come to this point, anxiety about potentially running into Allison or Jason at the resort, but also a growing sense of excitement about my solo adventure. For perhaps the first time in my adult life, I was determined to make the most of it. "Nassau, here I come," I whispered to myself as I zipped my suitcase closed. Ready or not, the flight to Nassau was uneventful, though my stomach knotted with anxiety as the plane began its descent over crystal blue waters and white sand beaches. Part of me still couldn't believe I was going through with this, traveling to my sister's wedding destination as an uninvited family member. The Grand Coral Resort was even more beautiful than the photos online had suggested. Palm trees swayed in the gentle breeze, and the open-air lobby featured a massive aquarium filled with tropical fish. As I approached the check-in desk, a cheerful receptionist greeted me. "Welcome to Grand Coral. Are you here for the Johnson-Clark wedding? I froze momentarily before finding my voice. No, just a personal vacation. Oh. She glanced at her computer screen. But you're booked under the wedding group rate. There's been a change of plans, I explained, trying to keep my tone neutral. I was hoping to stay in the beach tower instead of the palm tower. If that's possible. I called about it last week. Yes, I see the note here. She typed quickly, then looked up with a smile. Actually, we have a lovely ocean view room available in the beach tower. Would you like to upgrade? Since you're not using the wedding block anymore, it would be an additional $40 per night. For a moment, I hesitated, calculating the extra cost. But then I thought about how I'd spent years being careful with money, often putting Allison's needs before my own. I'll take it, I said decisively. The beginner course is perfect for solo travelers. You'll meet lots of people. That's good to hear, I replied. I'm traveling alone and was worried about feeling isolated. Trust me. By the end of your stay, you'll have more friends than you know what to do with, he assured me with a warm smile. The solo traveler happy hour at the Seashell Bar tonight is a good place to start. I took his advice and headed to the bar that evening, where I met a diverse group of travelers. Lisa, a recently divorced lawyer celebrating her freedom, Marco, an author researching his next novel, and the Wilson sisters, Daisy and Iris, both in their 60s, who traveled together twice yearly since their husbands passed away. By the time I returned to my room that night, I'd exchanged phone numbers with my new acquaintances and made plans to join Lisa for breakfast before my scuba class. The next morning dawned bright and beautiful. After a leisurely breakfast with Lisa, I headed to the dive center, where I met Tyler again. As it turned out, he was one of the scuba instructors. Hazel, good to see you again, he greeted me. Ready to explore the underwater world? The class consisted of 6 people, including me. Tyler was a patient teacher, guiding us through basic safety procedures before we even entered the water. By lunchtime, I was practicing breathing through a regulator in the resort's training pool, amazed by how natural it felt once I got over the initial strangeness. That afternoon, as I relaxed by the adults-only pool with a book, my phone buzzed with a text from Jenna. Just checked in. Her curly hair pulled back with a scarf. Look at you, she exclaimed, hugging me tight. You're positively glowing. Freedom suits you. Over coffee and tropical fruit plates. She filled me in on the family gossip. Apparently, the uninvitation spree hadn't stopped with me. Several aunts and uncles had also been cut from the guest list after expressing even mild concerns about their rushed marriage. It's basically going to be Jason's family, his work friends, and enjoyed authentic Bahamian cuisine for lunch. For a few hours, I almost forgot about the wedding altogether. That evening, however, reality came crashing back when Jenna texted, "They're here. Just saw ANJ checking in with his parents." My heart raced as I replied, "Have they seen you?" "No," I ducked behind a potted palm. Very spy-like of me. Despite my determination to enjoy my vacation, knowing Allison was now at the same resort made my stomach churn. I decided to have dinner in my room that night rather than risk an uncomfortable encounter in one of the restaurants. The next morning, I returned to scuba class, grateful for the distraction. Tyler noticed my subdued mood immediately. "Everything okay?" he asked as we prepared our equipment. "Family complications," I said vaguely. "Nothing a few hours underwater won't fix." He smiled understandingly. The ocean has a way of putting problems in perspective. He was right. During our first open water dive in the resort's lagoon, all thoughts of Allison and the wedding disappeared. Beneath the surface, surrounded by colorful fish and swaying coral, I experienced a peace I hadn't felt in months. The weightlessness, the rhythmic sound of my own breathing, the gentle current, everything combined to create a meditative experience. When we surfaced, Tyler gave me a thumbs up. "You're a natural, Hazel." I received a flurry of texts from Jenna, who was apparently serving as my unofficial wedding spy. "Rehearsal dinner tonight. Tension already. Looks exhausted. Jason's mom criticizing everything. The flowers, the menu, even A's hair. Your mom trying to help but getting shut down by Jay's parents." I tried to focus on my own experience. joining Marco and the Wilson sisters for a sunset catamaran cruise. As we sailed along the coastline, watching the sky transform into brilliant shades of orange and pink, I found myself sharing my situation with them. "You're better off out here with us," Iris declared after hearing the story. "Life's too short for toxic relationships, even family ones." That night, I posted a photo of myself on the catamaran, smiling with my new friends, the sunset glorious behind us. Within minutes, several mutual friends had liked it. And I knew it would eventually reach Allison. Part of me felt guilty for looking so happy, but a stronger part felt vindicated. As I fell asleep to the sound of waves crashing on the beach below my balcony, I had no idea that tomorrow, Allison's wedding day, would bring the most unexpected turn of events yet. I woke early on Saturday, wedding day, feeling strangely anxious. After a light breakfast on my balcony, I headed to my final scuba certification dive, deliberately scheduling it during the 2:00 p.m. ceremony. No matter how much I'd tried to convince myself I was over the hurt, I couldn't bear the thought of sitting by the pool, knowing my sister was walking down the aisle just a few hundred yards away. Just as I was meeting Tyler at the dive shop, my phone buzzed with a text from Jenna. "Wedding delayed. Some issue with flowers. Will update." I showed Tyler the message, having already explained my complicated situation during yesterday's lesson. "Family drama," he nodded sympathetically. "All the more reason to spend the day underwater. Ready to explore the reef?" The dive was even more spectacular than previous ones. Tyler suggested a celebratory drink at the beach bar to toast my certification completion. As we settled into chairs facing the ocean, I checked my phone and gasped. 17 texts and 3 missed calls, all from Jenna. I scrolled quickly through the messages. "Wedding now postponed till 4 p.m. Something's going on." Lots of shouting from bridal suite. "OMG Hazel." Drama explosion. "Kelly, bridesmaid, missing 2. DEFCON 1. Jason caught with Kelly in pool cabana. Wedding officially off. Allison found them together. Total chaos. Jason claiming misunderstanding. A locked herself in room. Jay's parents blaming a 4, embarrassing them. Your mom trying to reach A. Security involved now. Jay's dad threatening to sue resort? A finally emerged. Public confrontation with Jay in lobby. Words exchanged that cannot be unexchanged. Jay admitted not first time with Kelly. Been happening since engagement. A through ring and pool. Epic exit. Currently with your mom. Jay's family claiming unstable and always looking for drama. Most guests leaving tomorrow. Wedding planner in tears. Your dad tried to convince A to think carefully before throwing away good match. Your mom nearly slapped him. Should I tell her you're here? Hazel, call me when you can. I sat frozen, trying to process this tsunami of information. Tyler, noticing my expression, asked gently, "Bad news?" "The wedding's off," I managed to say. "My sister caught her fiancé with a bridesmaid." Tyler winced. "That's rough. What are you going to do?" It was a good question. Part of me, a small, hurt part one wasn't proud of, felt vindicated. Jason had shown his true colors in the most dramatic way possible. But the larger part of my heart ached for Allison. Despite everything, she was still my sister. And she was experiencing what was likely the most humiliating, painful moment of her life. I need to reach out to her, I decided. But carefully. I excused myself and called Jenna, who answered immediately. "It's even worse than my texts," she said without preamble. "Jason is claiming Allison drove him to it by being cold and distant these past weeks. His parents are threatening to bill her for their travel expenses. It's a complete nightmare." "Where is she now?" I asked. "In her suite with your mom and the wedding planner. Figuring out how to notify everyone and deal with vendors. She's vacillating between sobbing and this scary calm determination." "Do you think I should let her know I'm here?" Jenna hesitated. "Maybe give her a few hours to process? This all just happened. I don't want to overwhelm her with another emotional situation." I agreed and spent the afternoon in a strange limbo, receiving periodic updates from Jenna. Apparently, Jason had made several attempts to speak with Allison, each rebuffed by hotel security at her request. His parents had checked out in a huff, making a scene at the front desk about refunds for this disaster of a non-wedding. By evening, things had quieted somewhat. Still unsure of the right move. Around 8 p.m., I finally decided to send Allison a simple text. I heard what happened. I'm so sorry. I'm here if you need me, and by here, I mean literally at the resort. No pressure, no expectations. Just know I love you no matter what. I stared at my phone for nearly an hour afterward, but no reply came. Eventually, I fell into a restless sleep, dreams filled with chaotic wedding scenes and underwater escapes. I woke to knocking at my door just after 7 a.m. Bleary-eyed, I peered through the peephole to see Jenna standing there. I quickly let her in. She wants to see you, Jenna said without preamble. She got your text last night, but was too overwhelmed to respond. She's in Suite 714 in the Palm Tower. My heart pounded as I quickly dressed and brushed my teeth. 20 minutes later, I stood outside Suite 714, gathering my courage before knocking softly. The door opened to reveal my mother, looking exhausted but relieved to see me. She hugged me tightly. "Thank God you're here," she whispered. "She needs her sister." Mom slipped out, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She looked up as I approached, her expression unreadable. For a moment, we just looked at each other. Then, simultaneously, we both said, "I'm sorry." And just like that, the tension broke. Allison burst into tears, and I rushed to her side, wrapping my arms around her as she sobbed against my shoulder. We stayed that way for a long time. The sound of waves crashing below us, the morning sun warming our skin. When Allison's sobs finally subsided, she pulled back to look at me, her face blotchy and eyes red. "I can't believe you're actually here," she whispered. "I had already paid for everything," I explained gently. "I decided to come anyway, just not to the wedding." A flash of pain crossed her face at the mention of the wedding, but she nodded. "Smart financial decision," she said, attempting a weak smile. Always the practical one. The part where I caught my fiancé half-naked with my college roommate in a cabana 3 hours before our wedding? Or the part where he tried to blame me for it? Or maybe the part where his parents called me a drama queen for not proceeding with the ceremony anyway? Despite the sarcasm, I could hear the raw agony beneath her words. "All of it," I said quietly. "Whatever you want to share." The story spilled out in painful detail. She had been looking for Kelly, who was supposed to help her with final hair adjustments. After searching for nearly 30 minutes, she had checked the private cabanas on a hunch and found Kelly and Jason in an unmistakably intimate situation. The worst part wasn't even catching them. As if his cheating was my fault. "That's gaslighting," I said, unable to keep the anger from my voice. "Classic manipulation." "I know that now," she replied. But for a moment, just a moment, I actually wondered if he was right. She turned to me, fresh tears welling. "How did I let myself get so lost, Hazel?" The question broke my heart. My confident, independent sister had been so thoroughly manipulated that she'd questioned her own worth, her own reality. "It happens gradually," I told her. "That's how controlling people work. They isolate you, undermine your confidence, make you dependent on their approval." She was quiet for a moment. Like uninviting my sister from my wedding because she politely disagreed with my future father-in-law? "Yeah," I said softly. "Like that." "I'm so sorry, Hazel." Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. Those weren't my words that day on the phone. Jason basically dictated what I should say. He convinced me you were trying to come between us, that you'd always been jealous of our relationship. I was concerned, not jealous, I clarified. "I saw how he was changing you, isolating you. I know that now." She reached for my hand. The way he controlled everything, what I wore, who I talked to, how much I spent, it happened so gradually I didn't see it. And when I did have moments of clarity, he'd do something sweet or loving that made me doubt my concerns. As morning stretched into afternoon, Allison revealed more details about her relationship with Jason that I hadn't known. How he'd check her phone regularly, how he'd belittle her career accomplishments, how he'd created arbitrary rules about when she could see friends or family. The destination wedding itself had been his idea, a way to ensure minimal attendance from her support network. What happens now? I finally asked as our mother returned with a tray of sandwiches and fruit. Allison looked overwhelmed by the question. I don't know. I have to cancel the honeymoon. Figure out how to explain this to everyone. Find a new place to live since we'd already given notice on my apartment. Her voice trailed off, the enormity of unwinding wedding plans clearly overwhelming her. One step at a time, Mom interjected gently. First, let's get through this weekend. You don't have to figure everything out alone, I added. I took the whole week off work. I'm here. Really? Allison looked surprised. Don't you have scuba classes or something? I smiled. I actually finished my certification yesterday, but I have other activities planned that you might enjoy too. Maybe you could join me. She hesitated. I don't know if I'm up for being around people. Then we'll do something just us, I suggested. There's a private cove on the other side of the island. Tyler, my scuba instructor, told me about it. Very secluded, perfect for hiding from scandal. That earned a small but genuine laugh from Allison. Hiding from scandal does sound appealing. The next morning, after Allison had endured a difficult conversation with the wedding planner about cancellation policies and vendor fees, I convinced her to join me for breakfast at a small cafe off the resort property. Just as we were finishing our coffee, her phone began buzzing repeatedly. It's Jason, she said, staring at the screen. Again. He's called 12 times since last night. You don't have to answer, I reminded her. I know. She silenced the phone, then after a moment's hesitation, blocked his number. That feels terrifying and liberating at the same time. We spent that day at the private cove, swimming in crystal clear water and dozing under palm trees. For brief periods. Allison seemed almost at peace, though I noticed how her mood would suddenly darken, no doubt replaying moments from the previous day. During our walk back to the resort, Allison suddenly stopped. I need to thank you. For what? For being here. For not saying I told you so, even though you'd have every right to. I linked my arm through hers. That's not how sisterhood works. Well, she said loudly, approaching with Thomas beside her. The drama queen and her enabler sister. Allison tensed beside me, but I stepped slightly forward. We're not interested in creating a scene, Mrs. Winters. Please excuse us. You've embarrassed our entire family, Thomas boomed, drawing attention from nearby guests. Jason was the best thing that ever happened to you, and you threw it away over one indiscretion. I felt Allison shrinking beside me, and something inside me snapped. Years of putting others first, of keeping the peace, of swallowing my true feelings, it all fell away in an instant of pure clarity. Your son is a manipulative, controlling cheater who was caught red-handed. I stated calmly but firmly. Allison deserves so much better, and deep down, I think you know that. Now please, step aside. Thomas's face reddened. How dare you speak to us that way? Jason told us you were a troublemaker from the beginning. To my surprise, Allison found her voice. Don't talk to my sister that way. She's been more family to me than Jason ever was. Her voice grew stronger with each word. Your son lied to me, cheated on me, isolated me from everyone who cared about me, and then tried to blame me for his behavior. I'm not the one who should be embarrassed here. The Winters looked stunned by her outburst. Before they could respond, a resort manager approached, having noticed the confrontation. Is everything all right here? He asked. We were just leaving, I said, guiding Allison toward the elevator. As the doors closed, Allison leaned against me, trembling but smiling. Did I really just do that? You did, I confirmed proudly. And it was magnificent. The remaining days of our Bahamas trip transformed into something neither of us could have anticipated. A healing retreat for both sisters. What had begun as my solo vacation of defiance and Allison's dream wedding had become a shared journey back to each other. On Tuesday morning, I convinced Allison to join my previously scheduled scuba experience, an introductory reef dive that required no certification. I can't, she protested when I first suggested it. Showed infinite patience as Allison struggled with her initial panic in the training pool. I watched as he gently coached her through breathing exercises, never rushing or pushing beyond her comfort zone. "Your sister's a natural," he told me while Allison practiced nearby. "She just doesn't know it yet." He was right. By the afternoon, Allison had progressed enough to join our shallow reef dive. The moment she fully submerged and took in the underwater wonderland, her eyes widened behind her mask in pure amazement. Afterward, she couldn't stop talking about the experience. "Did you see that blue fish? The one with the yellow stripes? And the coral that looked like brains? It was incredible." I smiled, recognizing that she'd found the same underwater piece I had discovered days earlier. Between activities, we had long. "I still can't believe I let him dictate who could be in my wedding," she admitted one evening as we walked along the beach. "When I think about how I treated you, I'm so ashamed." Allison had depleted her savings on wedding expenses, many of which were non-refundable. Her living situation was precarious, as she'd need to find a new apartment quickly. "Move in with me," I suggested without hesitation. "Just temporarily, until you get back on your feet." I couldn't impose like that. It's not imposing. It's family helping family. Like when you stayed with me during your internship after college. Gradually, Allison began accepting help, not just from me, but from others too. She reconnected with friends she'd distanced herself from during her relationship with Jason. Several called her at the resort after hearing about the wedding disaster, joining us for dinner one evening and sharing stories of other dramatic resort incidents he'd witnessed over the years. "Trust me, your non-wedding isn't even in the top 5 resort scandals I've seen," he assured Allison, making her laugh for the first time since the disaster. On our final evening in Nassau, we splurged on dinner at the resort's premier restaurant, a meal originally planned as my solo "I don't need a wedding to enjoy myself" treat. Dressed in our finest vacation attire, we toasted with champagne as the sun set over the ocean. "To new beginnings," I offered. "And to sisterhood," Allison added. "The real, messy, imperfect kind that survives even when we make terrible mistakes." "Especially then," I agreed. 6 months after returning home, Allison had made remarkable progress. She found a new apartment, started therapy to address the emotional manipulation she'd experienced, and received a promotion at work, something Jason had discouraged her from pursuing because it would take too much time away from building a family. I had changes of my own, including a blossoming long-distance friendship with Tyler that involved regular video calls and plans for a return trip to Nassau. The 1-year anniversary of the wedding that wasn't arrived with much less pain than either of us had anticipated. We marked the day with a sisters-only dinner at our favorite restaurant. "I'm seeing someone new," Allison announced over dessert. Very casually, very slowly. "His name is Nathan. He's a graphic designer I met through work." "That's wonderful," I said sincerely. "What's he like?" "Kind. Respectful. And get this, when I mentioned having dinner with you tonight, he said he thought it was great that we're so close." She smiled. "No jealousy. No attempts to isolate me. Just support." "He sounds promising." "He is," she agreed. "But even if it doesn't work out, I'm okay." I realize that sometimes the most painful experiences lead to the most important growth. Allison and I both learned crucial lessons about standing our ground, recognizing manipulation, and the irreplaceable value of authentic relationships. The wedding disaster that could have permanently divided us instead brought us closer than ever. By choosing to show up, both physically at the resort and emotionally for each other afterward, we reclaimed not just our sisterhood, but stronger versions of ourselves. If you're facing a similar situation with family members who seem under the influence of controlling partners, remember that true love never asks you to diminish yourself or cut off people who care about you. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is maintain your boundaries, even when it's painful. Have you ever had to stand your ground with family, even when it was difficult? Or found yourself reconnecting with someone after a painful falling out? Share your experiences in the comments below. And I hope it helps someone who might be going through something similar right now.